this is uh an aspirational Thanksgiving, like what we wish we were thankful for.
That's a very good idea.
What
Yes.
what there's places in other countries, and you've been studying this for a long time, that are, these other countries where the people are actually happy and not living this enormous amount of discontent, and as you
Right.
said, the addiction going through the ceiling,
And death and all those things, those
and
unhappy
despair,
things. Yes.
despair, death is like almost a relief from I would
Yeah.
imagine, I don't really know.
And people are cultivating it through um, eating too much, through taking drugs, through drinking too much, and through committing suicide
Right.
directly rather than indirectly through those other means. And our life expectancy is going down in America while it's going down in the other wealthy countries of the world. We're an outlier in our depression and our suppression of working people.
Oh wait, it's going up in the other wealthy countries?
Yes, they're
Oh.
all we even Cuba, it's going up, a poor little country, China, and so on. We are an outlier in that people are dying younger in the United States, and it isn't all people. It's people who aren't making any money anymore.
Mm.
People who used to have solid middle class lives through union jobs in manufacturing. Mainly it's white working class people.
Mhm.
People without a BA are dying so much faster than they ever did. And they're also getting sick because the pain centers in the brain for emotional pain and physical pain are the same. And so that they're also sicker than the other people in the Western industrialized world.
It's interesting to think about the people whose lives have really hit the bottom at around the end of capitalism, the stage in capitalism in which we find ourselves in the United States. I also find that people with the BA who are, maybe they were at the top of the middle class, but they're in the middle or the bottom now.
Right.
People are unhappy in the United
Very
States.
unhappy. Very unhappy because what makes people feel happy is being taken care of, having a sense of trust, having a sense of hope for the future. The happiest countries in the world, the first one is Finland. Well, I'll just go over the first six because otherwise it's boring. But Finland,
I
Iceland.
don't want to know that so many people are happier than us.
Yeah, well, they sure are. We're 19th in the World
Oh,
Happiness Index. I'm talking about 1 to 6, Finland, Iceland, Denmark, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and Sweden. And I tried to figure out what do they have that we don't? Oh, wow. What don't they have? We
yeah.
don't. They have generous maternity and paternity leaves. They have full reproductive rights and free abortion. Abortion in Texas is harder to get than it is in Saudi Arabia. Abortion in Alabama or Mississippi is also harder to get than it is to get in Saudi Arabia, and it's also, of course, expensive. So we're own the own. All of these countries have free health care, free quality childcare and after school care and vacation care and maternity and paternity leaves and all those things that help you feel like I'm cared for.
Mm.
And so that they don't have the level of anxiety and worry and abandonment. Also, they have higher trust levels. These are things are all measured in the UN World Happiness Index, which came out in 2021. And I think partly they're more trustworthy, they're more trustful because they're not bombarded by advertisements all the time where they're being lied to that some product is going to give them the joy it's not. And so they feel embattled. And because the promises of democracy in a country with two capitalist parties are pretty slim, and a country that's gerrymandering their votes, these promises are hollow. Trump promised that he would address the problem of runaway factories and lost jobs. They increased.
Mm.
who got the
Yeah.
benefit was the top, the
And yet
1%.
they still love him. They're just
They
still
love him
fine with
for
him.
his rage. They love him for his unorthodoxy, for his saying, "Forget it, everything sucks and I'm the best," and they envy his bravado. They envy his flaunting his money. They his popularity is diminishing. Doesn't help that he claims that he won an election he didn't win and that legally all of his appeals have been turned down. But it's also just that it's getting old, this claim that's been disproven.
It's also it also seems like there are other, like, mini Trumps willing to step into his place even though
Oh,
they
of
look
course.
they look more respectable. You've got not that I like any of them or think any of them are respectable, but you've got your Ted Cruz and you've got your Governor DeSantis of Florida.
Josh Hawley too.
How
You
do
have
those people think they're gonna be the Trump supporters? Like, how did if this segment is about happiness, like, how do they think they're just gonna be happy once they own the libs? I mean, do they think they're gonna go
Yes. I think that they're gonna go back to the 1950s when white men were guaranteed jobs that supported women and children, and women didn't leave men, and their
Mm,
lives were secure. Women were secure in having a status as a being married to someone. Men were secure in their employment if they were white.
mm,
And they want to go back to those good old racist, sexist days. And one of the reasons is it started with Clinton, who was elected with a lot of energy from labor and the AFL CIO and decided to pass NAFTA,
mm,
which exported millions of jobs overseas
mm,
and gave government support to the abandonment of the working class. And so that both they did that for corporate cash, and in order to cover his dirty tracks, his blood-stained tracks, he threw out certain benefits to women and certain benefits to people of color, so that it masked the abandonment of the working class. And so people think if they could only go back to those racist, sexist days, they would be happy, but they won't, because the US actually supported those businesses going to China, India, Bangladesh that pay from $1 to the Chinese are paid the most, $3.19 an hour, with fewer health protections and no ecological rules.
well, they're probably not that happy over there either.
No, because happiness has two components. One is a sense of being cared for, which often they're not, although they all have maternity leaves except for us, and also a sense of control over your life.
Mm,
China is an authoritarian state. When people did not isolate themselves during COVID, they welded their doors shut and fed them through the window. I
wow.
mean, there was very little choice. Whereas New Zealand was in the top 10 and which has had all in all since the beginning 36 deaths, trusted Jacinda Ardern, the Socialist Labor Party leader that they elected by over 70%, and followed her idea. Look, we'll keep each other safe. We can't go outside except for essentials. We're in it together, folks. Let's do it together, which is pretty much what Finland, the happiest country in the world, Iceland, the second one, Denmark, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Sweden, they all did that. They trust that their elected government, selected out of not only different parties that are both capitalist, but capitalist parties, socialist parties, anarchist parties, monarchist parties, fascist parties in the case of some, but they had a choice and they feel like they have a role.
Mm,
And they all have voting day as a national holiday, and many of them have compulsory voting.
mm,
You have to participate in the affairs of your country. And they have a sense that they can participate, they're important, and they're protected, and their children are protected with free medical care, free education, free after school care, highly subsidized camps for the summer. And they feel like, okay, We are taken care of here,
I
and
remember.
Americans are abandoned.
Oh, yes. Oh, God. I remember, and all because that serves capitalism, the sense of being abandoned, serves capitalism.
It sure does. It
Uh,
sure does. Because then everybody's suspicious, everyone's against everyone else, people don't unite to protest. Now that's changing. 250,000 people are on strike right now, even if the AFL-CIO isn't supporting them, and people are catching on even without a strong socialist party or media here, which is something that is wonderful about the American people, that they're saying, "You told us we were essential during 2020. Now you pay us like crap? We risked our lives. What do you mean?" We've also had some time off and some money, which shows we could afford a universal basic income. We don't have to be paid like crap and struggle.
I
So,
I
come on.
remember I remember when we were talking about what people can do on your program, Capitalism Hits Home. We were talking about what people can do to fight the isolation around what was happening during COVID. And one of the things you said was like you need other people.
You do.
And um, it certainly seems like there are so many forces. You just mentioned a few. Capitalism pits people against each other. Um, that keep people
Americans
away from each other.
isolated. Yes. Also, everybody's home watching their own little TV, and things are organized to sell you your individual things so you can sell more. And we don't have the kind of strong unions that used to have bowling leagues and this and that and got people involved, because it's one thing to sell a product in a corporate union structure that sells collective bargaining and health plans. It's another thing to have a movement where people who do the work should run the country. That's very different. It's a different sense of empowerment.
Mm.
And I think people are wanting that sense of empowerment that they have in happy countries. And that's
Ah,
why we're not happy.
I brought Maslow's hierarchy of needs with
Good.
us, and, we have talked about well, let me get that up here. Here we are. We'll be small and they'll be big. And we have
Yes.
talked about, you know, we've talked about a big section of these. What we haven't really talked about is self-actualization. This at the very top of the pyramid. Most people don't really get up there. We talked about psychological needs, air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. I would say a clean environment, environmental protection would
Right.
fall under that very first basic psychological need. And
Right.
now people are terrified around.
Yeah, because they've been abandoned there too. We have more deaths than any other country.
Mhm.
China has 1.373, I think it is, billion people. They've had 6,000 COVID deaths, 6,500, I think it is. We have 679,000 and going up,
And
more
also
than
the environment.
anyone. And the environment is
Ugh,
being neglected, and Manchin is there defending fossil
coal
fuel
mining.
industry, and people are, you know, and they're being tolerated in this and catered to, him and Sinema. There isn't a real alternative here.
No. And so going up, there's, the safety needs, which we've talked about, the love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, sense of connection. We've talked about that.
Absolutely.
Esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, freedom, strength. We
Which
did.
goes when you lose your job and your position in the community and you're thrust down, down, down with little prospect, it's hard to feel you're self-actualizing because you're not, you
Do
know.
you think do you think the white men that we were talking about before, since they've been thrown down, down, down by capitalism, they're just clinging to their whiteness as the one last thing that they
Yes,
can.
and they're clinging to the past, which was more prosperous for them and also more racist.
Mm.
And Trump has done what every successful fascist does. He takes the problems of capitalism, because fascism holds capitalism together when it's falling apart. He takes the problems of capitalism and makes you blame them on the person below you. So the Germans did that to the gypsies and the Jews who they polished off in huge numbers, as well as to socialists. But mainly it was getting people's racism to see that the Jews had betrayed them during World War One, which they lost with humiliation, and those are the people to wipe out. Here it's people of color and uppity women because they managed to transfer the rage that is justified from the corporations onto the people below you. Suck up, kick down.
Oh.
There was an analogy which I think is appropriate, that there's a pig upstream that is crapping in the stream. The people at the bottom of the stream are fighting each other for each getting slightly better water. No, get rid of the
Yeah,
pig.
right. When it comes to the top of that pyramid, self-actualization, I was talking to some of the other staff members about on Act TV about what would be kind of up there. And one of the things that they brought up, which I thought was interesting, was a societal not only support for the arts, but a disentanglement from the arts and capitalism, where there's doesn't necessarily need to be a profit motive to make a film. It
That's
doesn't have.
right.
What
Doesn't have to
What are your
cost
thoughts
so
in this
much.
area?
I think that, of course, that's true, but self-actualization is also having a chance to promote on the job if you do it well, not having a hierarchy for people who've been through business school who may have no feeling for this business at all, and putting corporate leaders in leadership positions as if they're qualified when, of course, they're not. They could
Mm,
be not allowed to be in government positions because they're out of touch.
mm,
They're at the top. But it means that giving people a chance to improve on the job, to have extracurricular activities that really mean something, to have neighborhood associations, to have active unions that have all sorts of activities, to have the arts as something to do without having to make money, and also to cutting this wellness industry. It's all in your head. It's not all in your head. If you're evicted, it's not in your head, honey.
mhm.
And 40% of Americans faced some threat of eviction at the end of the biggest part of the pandemic. That's pretty scary.
There's also this. You mentioned this wellness industry. There's also this kind of, um, I don't know what you want to call it,
Self-care.
self help, whatever. It like this. It's a magical thinking. It's like I mean, I hate to name names, but there are people out there who have enormous followings who do stadium work of, people just like, "It's your fault." If you just had,
That's right.
you
Bad
know
attitude, bad decisions. And most people accept that, which is why they're so depressed and self-destructive. That, there used to be a saying, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich? Well, it's pretty obvious why.
Yeah, because only 2 people can be rich in a capitalist system where everyone else
That's
is
right.
standing on your shoulders.
That's
Yes.
right, exactly, and making money off your labor and your life, and so you get less so that they can get more.
Isn't it also a false sense of, I mean, domination does not equal capitalism, does not equal happiness. So if you are a winner in capitalism, you've got the money, you've got this, you've got whatever you think, that means you have dominated other human beings and
That's
animals
right,
and other things, the earth
right.
or whatever you want to say. Um, that does not mean happiness.
No,
Happiness,
happiness is connection.
yeah.
Mental health is connection on every level, and people who are they connect to the other people who could afford the golf club maybe, but not on a deeper level, and so Americans are terribly lonely and unhappy because
Mhm,
happiness is feeling a part of all of us, which they can't while they're hoarding money and other people are on the street.
mhm. Ugh. Do you think they actually have guilt? Do
No,
they see that? They just don't even notice it. They
it's
think
not
they're happy.
conscious. Well, they don't think they're happy, but they're not guilty because they think, I'm winning, I got more.
Yeah. But
and it
winning
gives
isn't
them
happiness.
satisfaction. No, it isn't,
No.
and they're often
You never
unhappy.
feel better, you just feel like you want more. It's this disease of more,
Exactly.
addiction is called the disease of more. You can never have enough,
Enough.
and
Exactly.
capitalism just forwards that idea that there is no enough.
That's right, and also, addiction is something that you do for yourself to make you feel better. It's not a collective effort, and it's an individualistic society. It's very interesting that the nation of Portugal, cut addiction by 75% in the last 10 to 12 years when they've had a government which was united of the Communist Party, the Socialist Party, and the Greens. And they legalized drugs, and the government controlled all the drug supplies. And when you went to buy your drugs, they gave you the choice of if you wanted help, and the drugs paid for the therapy and the support of people who wanted to get off. There wasn't pressure to get off, and people stopped dying because they weren't injecting concrete into their veins and stuff. But it was a really successful program, and they are doing so much better across the board. But they
It
had political choice. We
it
don't.
we're so far down, and I know you have to go soon, and I do appreciate you spending time with me here having this conversation. It's really important, and,
It is.
maybe final area here to get your thoughts on. We're so, it seems to me that this lack of connection, lack of caring has gotten so far out of hand that people
Ooh,
they
yeah.
don't care about children anymore. I mean, children was always the thing you'd hold up like, "The children, we're doing this for." They don't care if you,
No,
shoot concrete in your veins and die. They
no.
don't, as long as they can make some money off you in the funeral expenses or the,
That's right.
the pharmaceuticals
Pharmaceuticals.
and all of that. I mean, we have gotten so far away.
From caring and connection with each other. The biggest trend among newly married couples is no kids. They're too expensive, it's too difficult because we put the whole burden on the parent and the whole burden of the future on children. 1 in 4 kids in the United States now doesn't get enough to eat regularly.
Ugh.
They go hungry. They call it food scarcity. It's hunger in the richest country in the world. It's an obscene thing that's happened here.
While we were on that meeting with the staff from Act TV, that's really interesting what you just said. She said, one of my coworkers, I want to get it right. She said, "Child poverty. How is that even a term? How are children?
Yeah.
How?
Well, one of the biggest predictors of poverty is having a child. One of the biggest
Well,
predictors
Harriet,
for
why didn't you tell
women's
me that 5
poverty.
years ago?"
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
For
that's right,
women's
because
poverty.
there is, I mean, it doesn't happen across the board, but there is this inborn connection.
Right,
You would call it love or attachment or whatever you want to
right.
call it between mother and child. That's very hard to overcome, get out of, and say, I'm tossing you to the side. Let me go on and do X, Y, Z. And I believe the powers that be obviously know about that connection, and they use it against women to keep
Yes,
them subjugated, because they know
exactly.
most of us are not going to toss our kids in the woods and say, "Fuck it, I'm
Yeah,
gonna
but we're
get
gonna
higher up in the
suffer.
company." Yeah.
Exactly, we're gonna suffer, and we're gonna be the ones who stayed home. That's 10 million women dropped out of the workforce during the pandemic because somebody had to stay home, and whether they're single parents or married parents, they were elected because women get less money and the family needed money. It's a terrible system of interlocking disastrous parts.
Harriet Fraad, my
Yes.
friend, thank you so much for, just thanks for this conversation. I mean, every time I talk to you, I feel like a more solid individual and human being, and I hope the
Good.
audience shares that
I hope
sentiment.
so too, and thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. So take care and
Take care.
bye-bye.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.